I'm trying to see now. We should start doing some perception and get some idea of what sort of things are you looking for. You know a few things. Number one, when you come to a community like this, they'll take care of you. You'll be fed. You'll have a place to stay. If you came by arrangement with some kind of trade goods or things like that, then there would be no talk of payment, no talk of any obligations. But when you show up basically asking for, for help, which you more or less have done, then they will be thinking in terms of, well, what are you going to do? So that's something you know without being asked. And then what are some other things that some of you might be concerned with, if anything? So I'm talking about the 4 characters who just arrived. I will also go in a moment to talk about our 4th character. I'm not counting correctly. Oh, 4 with Jala, right. And then our 5th character we'll talk about in a moment.
All right.
I'd like to try 2 things, both local knowledge and cult lore, because on one side, I think Skava would like to figure out how to at least symbolically repay the kindness of the people, and on the other hand side, she's probably really desperate to find a shrine or anything to get into contact with woman, because that's the way I interpret last time's bad roles. She's really
right. Good point.
Kind
That's
of
fair. Yeah. A little disconnected.
Losing her. Right. Yeah.
Okay. In that case, I want you to first of all, making that cult lore skill is a really good idea. Let's try that.
Nope. 45. I think I have a 40. I think the sheet is wrong, but it's not enough either way.
Okay. And so that's one that's not too bad. We'll talk about that in a moment. The other things. So Sandra, did you have any ideas about what you wanted to examine?
I'm curious about that broken building.
Right.
Other than that, I'm not really sure at the moment, since everything is friendly. So I'm just hanging back, seeing what's happening.
Okay. And Nate, any ideas?
I was gonna ask them for how often do you see these insect people? They are common occurrence nowadays, or?
Well, typically the insect people had not really come to this region and had kept to their own places in the mountains. But in the course of the last year, they have been attacking, and more and more and more, until recently they conducted quite a heavy attack on the across the river. And one of the unfortunate results of this was that the trade to this area apparently has been disrupted. So they may have been also active at other points on the river and disrupting the boat passage elsewhere. They haven't seen any evidence of that directly here, but the absence of the boats would suggest that there is some kind of a problem about that elsewhere. They have more things to say about that, but before we get there, Mika, we have with you an interesting question. I'm going to give you some backstory, and if you hate it, let me know.
Okay, sure.
So the idea that I have is that you were with an expedition not specifically to this area. So you didn't come up the river. Instead, you went to that body of water in the center of the continent and drove north. I think we talked about this a little bit.
Yeah, we did.
And that this was into an area or culture that was quite different from the western coast that you're from. And so now the things basically went from bad to worse for your expedition. There's all been all kinds of problems. And in fact, some of you were forced to flee. Friendly people helped you through the mountains and deposited you here. You may have been the last member of your expedition. Maybe you were separated from the others, or they took a different route, some of them. But now this was good news for you to find this, to be put here, because here's the river that you need to go back home, more or less. But
And that's the river.
Of course, of course, there doesn't seem to be any river traffic right now.
Mm.
So you too have come here. Perhaps you have made yourself useful with your skills, with your brewing skills. But you didn't come to this spot to establish any kind of a trading situation. And you're not with your companions. And so in many ways, I'm thinking that your big priority is just somehow to leave. That's what you really like to do.
Yeah, I'm a assistant merchant, so
Right. You're kind of stuck.
I only have limited skills.
Right. Now the good news is that financially, the way this culture works is when somebody invests a lot of wealth into an expedition like that, the people that the debt goes to them. Basically, if you invest and you lose, well, you lost. The people you lent it to don't have to pay you back. That's the way that the temple, the cult of the open way, that's the name of the merchant cult that you're part of, whose runes, by the way, are water, and also an unusual rune called exchange, which is unique. So you are also a member, you're a layman of the cult of the open way, and in some ways that makes you kind of protected, especially if you were with a priest or something, which you're not. But the point is that you are at least a holy place for you, for this cult. I know it's not your main cult, but for this cult, the headwaters, the places where water begins to go downstream, that's and where a river can properly be said to begin. Those are holy to your cult. So as far as you're concerned, this is a very good place to be. And you can even treat it almost like a mini temple, if you want, just because of its geographical nature. So that's not so it's great for you to get here. When you found out that there were all these problems with the insect people, you found out that that there wasn't any river traffic. That was sort of really bad news, because otherwise this was ideal.
Okay.
So at this point, I think it's probably fair for you to be introduced to another traveler, who is a small person, and is immediately recognizable to Zort, especially, because this person is a half snake. And half snakes are the people who have the serpent rune as well as the man rune. And some of them look very human with a few features like a snake, like their eyes or the nature of their skin. And then others are much more snake-like in appearance, more reptilian, and that's what this one is like. And what color are you, by the way? Your scales and
green, I believe. That's more reptilian, so of course they have many colors, but
that's right. Which one do you like?
Yeah, green.
Okay. This half snakes are very common, especially in the island's coastal area that Zort is from, and it's really not a surprise. They aren't that exotic. But on the other hand, Ikindu is dressed very much like a Westerner. So has clothes much more like you do, and definitely, I mean, one look and you're like, okay, you're from there. You know, you're from the areas that I know. So
should I introduce myself now
sure.
to the group?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Yeah. I should explain that we have all these big tables set up, and you have big bowls of this stew, and Hin is there with, as I say, a number of other people, and different conversations are happening. It is all being handled. It's not like a judge. They're not like seated on a great big chair, and you're not standing in a row in front of them. It's more like everybody's just gathered and is eating and talking. So
okay.
That's the circumstance. So it's not very strange. They will certainly have noticed you. But it's not strange it's not like they march you in and like sit you down or anything like that.
Okay. So my character tries to sit beside Skava.
Mm-hmm.
And gets it seated. And I said, well, hello, my name is Inkindo. I heard that you were speaking my father's and mother's tongue. It's been a long time since I've heard the language of my fathers and mothers. I guess you've traveled a long way to get here. And when I'm saying that, I order the party a round of beers.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
Just to get to know them, and then ask them, how has your travels been?
Well, we could say that we have traveled far, but we didn't really intend to get here. And
Oh.
Well, we could say that's kind of a problem. We left behind some things that should be resolved.
So your plan is going back home?
More or less, I think. Right, Skava?
Our plan is probably to go downriver.
Oh, excellent.
If we can find some transport. By the way, my name is Skava.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I have the same idea. Obviously, during the siege, I couldn't go here, and sadly, I arrived just before the siege. So I believe that the locals see me with suspicion, being a foreigner coming right before the siege of the insectoids. Do you have any travels or travel document, or do you know any merchant that's going with boats downstream?
Not at the moment.
This is kind of interesting because one of Ikindu's possessions on his sheet is a parchment. Parchment is, I don't know if there must be a good word for that in Swedish. It's the
Pergament.
Pergament.
Yeah. And so, as you know, it is actually the skin of a cow or a lamb or a sheep, and that's been treated and stripped and, turned into
Yeah.
this paper-like stuff. And so on it is a whole a whole lot of symbolic information, which is everybody in his expedition had one of these. And so in many ways, it's like money. You actually can just show this places, and you have hospitality, and you are treated. They take your expedition or your merchant organization seriously.